Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto was taken by Yoda and trained to become a Jedi Knight. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Crystal City, Christophsis. The battle for Christophsis had been going on for some time now, with the Republic being unable to break the heavily dug-in Separatist position, and the Separatists being unable to oust the Republic from the system. The conflict had left much of the urban areas in ruins, as General Skywalker's 501st Legion and General Kenobi's 7th Sky Corps desperately defended against General Warm Loathsome's advancing and energy-shielded army. Here they come. Anakin shouted as another group of droids came marching down the large avenue towards the Republic lines. The first waves advanced beyond the shield and began to open fire on their position. Obi-Wan sighed as he ignited his saber in defense. "I told you sending the ship back was a mistake," Obi-Wan stated in his typical told-you-so tone that his former Padawan had become too familiar with. Anakin frowned at the accusation. "Well, it wasn't strictly my idea," he protested, recalling that both of them had come to the same conclusion. Obi-Wan shook his head. It didn't matter whose idea it was. The battle had already begun and they would have to make do with what they could. Our cannons should be able to hold them at bay for a little longer. "Anakin, you take your men and attack those tri-droids from above," Obi-Wan stated as Anakin nodded. It was a decent plane, and their cannons would present a great challenge to the droids. "Cody, form a defensive line behind the rubble. Keep them at bay," Obi-Wan shouted as the clones opened fire at the droid lines. Anakin, in the meantime, gathered up the usual suspects. Rex and a few others joined him in scurrying their way over to a building before fighting their way up. "Sir, what's the plan?" Rex questioned as they kept making their way up. "Our communications are shot, we can't reach command. So we keep fighting till our reinforcements arrive," Anakin replied as they reached the top. Looking down before they saw that the tri-droids were at the very rear of the droid formation, Anakin nodded to himself. "Alright then, follow me," Anakin shouted as he jumped down from the building, the clones utilizing their jetpacks to follow him. The group landed underneath the large droids, while Anakin landed opposite to land atop one to distract the others. Within the next few minutes the Republic forces managed to rout the Separatist front line, as per usual, just in time for a Republic shuttle to come into view overhead. "SR reinforcements are here," Anakin muttered to himself as he approached Obi-Wan as the two headed towards the shuttle. "Seems like so. Fresh troops and supplies. We should be able to manage it from here," Obi-Wan stated as Anakin chuckled. Finally they would have help. Approaching the shuttle, they realized that it was too small to be carrying more than a single squad of troops. "I don't think this is our reinforcements," Anakin stated, and true to his words, the only person coming of the shuttle was a Jedi, or rather young Jedi, and she didn't look all that pleased. Obi-Wan was pleasantly surprised. "Ahsoka, I had no idea they'd assign you to me. Seems strange, actually, given our history. Regardless, I'm happy to have you by my side. We could use the help here." Obi-Wan greeted Ahsoka warmly, but the Tigrita wasn't in a warm mood. She ignored the Jedi Master completely and turned to his former Padawan. "You must be Anakin Skywalker." She forced the words as flatly as possible as she walked up to him, outstretching her arm. Anakin raised an eyebrow as Obi-Wan looked between the two Jedi. "Yes, I am Anakin Skywalker," he replied, somewhat confused but taking her handshake all the same. It was best to give a good first impression as it may dismay any illusions of who he was supposed to be in her eyes. "Well, it's nice to meet you, I guess." Ahsoka was pained trying to hide her excitement. She'd heard so many stories about the hero with no fear from Padawans and younglings throughout the Order, but she'd also heard a few stories about the petty, barely competent asshole from Naruto. She decided that her best course of action was complete neutrality. Same, I guess." "Ahsoka." Anakin was confused. He could tell this girl was overly tense about something. Whatever it was eating at her inside and she was having trouble hiding it. "Ahsoka Tano," Obi-Wan finished. It seems that Naruto's distaste for Anakin had been passed along, but he couldn't put a finger on why she was so stressed out either. "Like it or not, Anakin is your superior and your senior as a Jedi. You should treat him with respect if you're going to be my Padawan," Obi-Wan reprimanded fairly, but also sternly. "You're right, Master, I'm sorry." Ahsoka tensed more internally. She was trying not to let either bias shine through. "But actually, he's not my superior, he's my new master," Ahsoka corrected. "Excuse me, what?" Anakin spat out incredulously. "I'm the one who requested a new apprentice, not Anakin." "Are you sure you were assigned to him?" Obi-Wan attempted to clarify, but Ahsoka shook her head. "I do wish it was you, Master Obi-Wan. But Master Yoda was very clear. Anakin Skywalker is to be my Jedi Master," Ahsoka stated. Even she wasn't all that on board with this. Anakin meanwhile was confused and a little upset. "Hold on just a minute, I never asked for any Padawan to slow me down." He was understandably a little outraged by this. It wasn't in his daily schedule to teach some kid. I have no intention of slowing you down. I'm capable of handling myself. Ahsoka voiced with confidence, but Anakin only rolled his eyes dismissively. This was not going to be fun. I don't like this one bit. Anakin grumbled. He wasn't comfortable taking a fresh Padawan into the heat of battle. Ahsoka briefly saw something in him that reminded her of, no, it was just her imagination. You can like it or not, Sky Guy, but you're my master and I'm your apprentice. Ahsoka branded her new master with a nickname as per her usual fare. I'm sure we'll be able to tolerate each other at some point. Ahsoka said with a slightly smug smile. Fine, but I'm talking to Master Yoda as soon as we're done with this. Come find me in about half an hour. I have to reorganize our troops before we can launch our counterattack. Anakin stated as he turned to leave. He would have to deal with this brat later, but right now they needed reinforcements. Ahsoka huffed as Anakin left, leaving her and Obi-Wan behind. The Jedi Master sighed as he turned to Ahsoka. Sorry about his behavior. He had no intention of being assigned a Padawan. Obi-Wan apologized for Anakin, but Ahsoka waved it off dismissively. It's okay, Obi. He's warned me about Anakin before. Sky Guy was warmer to the situation than I expected, actually. Ahsoka was glad that the actual Anakin was more in line with the hero persona he was known for, rather than the asshole image Naruto had painted. The public headquarters, Crystal City, Christophsis. The two Jedi had climbed atop the balcony of a collapsed building for a better view of the battlefield. It was remote enough that they wouldn't be spotted by enemy snipers, but also close enough that they could be found by Anakin if needed. A shield generator. Ahsoka spoke from behind him as Obi-Wan nodded. Yes, and that will make things harder. He stated as Ahsoka walked up next to him. Forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but any kind of weapon you have won't do anything against that shield generator. We should pull back our cannons and avoid a fight with the enemy initially. Ahsoka advised as Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow. Was a Padawan giving him advice? Then it hit him. I assume that he trained you in a few things. Obi-Wan questioned as Ahsoka nodded. Yes. More about tactical advantages rather than actual lightsaber combat, but like I told Anakin. I'm not so helpless, Master Obi-Wan. Ahsoka stated as the Jedi Master stroked his beard, mildly impressed. Naruto was an excellent general, greater than him in most regards. It didn't come as a surprise to learn that Naruto taught her a thing or two. Be that as it may, you're still young and don't have the same level of experience as him. You would do well to keep suggestions like that to yourself. Ahsoka suddenly looked sullen and frustrated. Some might not react as favorably. Obi-Wan added. It was meant to help rather than harm. There were officers that might take offense at a child barking orders, even if that child was trained by the best general the Jedi had to offer. Before he could say anything more, Anakin already had made his way up. I talked with Cruiser above, and our reinforcements are going to take some time. With that in mind, I decided to turn our reinforcements into an airstrike. So we should deal with that shield generator quickly. He explained as Obi-Wan nodded. So, how are we going to deal with that shield generator? Ahsoka questioned her two superiors. Between them and that shield generator was an army of droids. Anakin frowned as he turned towards the shield with his electrobinoculars. Well, that's the real trick, isn't it? He said with a smirk as he searched the droid lines for some sort of weakness. After a few minutes of discussion with Obi-Wan and Rex through the comlink, Anakin thought he had come up with a decent enough plan, but it would require Obi-Wan to stall the enemy for a significant amount of time. Alright, let's do it your way. Obi-Wan concurred with his former lit up at the approval of his plan. Perfect, I knew you'd see things my way. Padawan. Ahsoka, the Padawan deadpanned. Ahsoka, right, go tell Captain Rex to prepare the men to execute Maneuver 1138. Ahsoka saluted semi-mockingly and began to climb down. You have that many tactical maneuvers? Obi-Wan asked, both impressed and appalled at the number. Can never have enough backup plans. You and I should come up with some way to communicate with them non-verbally. Anakin suggested, but Obi-Wan begrudged the thought of memorizing so many plans and gestures. He followed after Anakin down the collapsed building. The two stopped when they saw Ahsoka standing stiff some distance from the clone troops. Ahsoka, what's wrong? Anakin asked worriedly. If he was going to be someone's master, then he might as well be a good one. I don't know who Captain Rex is. Ahsoka mumbled out. Ah, that makes sense. You've only been here for an hour. Come on, I'll introduce you. Anakin relaxed knowing it wasn't something more serious. Anakin, wait. Obi-Wan called. The Jedi Knight stopped dead in his tracks, and turned around to see his master calling him closer. Putting a damper on his plans, Anakin leaned down to Ahsoka and pointed out Rex in the crowd. Ahsoka ran off to deliver the orders as Anakin headed back towards Obi-Wan. I think we should move the cannons back and wait till our forces are inside the shield generator before we engage. Obi-Wan said quietly. Are you sure? Moving our cannons back, I'm not certain if they'll be in range of the shield when we bring it down. Anakin voiced his concerns. They will be, trust me. I'll draw the separatists in close enough. Obi-Wan reassured. Anakin shrugged his "You're the boss" shrug. The two went their separate ways. With Obi-Wan going to find Cody and Anakin following after Ahsoka and Rex, who were getting to know each other on a short walk. So if you're a captain and I'm a GD, then technically I outrank you, right? Ahsoka. In my book, experience outranks everything. Rex said somewhat grimly. Despite 10 years of training on Kamino, he still learned many things about battle the hard way. Then I probably do outrank you. Ahsoka smirked, confident that her training with Naruto was more than anything Rex had. Ha, we'll see about that, youngling. Rex thought Ahsoka's naive confidence was endearing, yet foolhardy. Padawan. Ahsoka sighed in frustration as the two turned their attention to Anakin. We'll have to sneak past the droids, and I have an idea. It'll be dangerous. You up for it, little one? Anakin started as Ahsoka raised an eyebrow. This ought to be fun. With Ahsoka and Anakin, this is not fun. Ahsoka stammered in a slight panic as she and Anakin sat underneath a metal box of sorts, as the droids marched past them. Anakin wasn't not concerned in the least. What? Afraid already? He teased her, causing her to roll her eyes. My older brother has done crazier things than this. Ahsoka quipped back, trying to act tough in a situation she found terrifying. Your brother is a GD, too? Interesting. I've never met GD that were blood siblings. I'd love to meet him sometime. Anakin leaned in to learn more. Well, we're not siblings in the traditional sense, and he's not a GD anymore. Ahsoka trailed off, not wanting to divulge more. Anakin was confused, but then realized that they had become siblings, much how he and Obi-Wan viewed each other as brothers. The fact that he wasn't a GD anymore likely meant that he had become one of the many casualties of this war. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure your brother was a great Jedi Knight. Anakin consoled his Padawan temp. He became a master, actually. But some say he was the best knight the Order had ever. Ahsoka reminisced about the fonder days with Naruto. Before the raging infernos of the war consumed every aspect of the Jedi's lives. Really? Like who? Anakin replied with an amused sneer, his pride slightly wounded. Well, Masters Obi-Wan and Plo Koon, for example. Oh, and Master Shakti. Master Yoda always sung praises about him during lessons in our youngling group. He was an amazing teacher. Ahsoka laid it on a bit too thick. Anakin was in disbelief that this Jedi existed without him knowing about it. If he's that famous that I must have known him. Anakin questioned. Ahsoka closed her eyes in contemplation. There was no use hiding it, he would find out eventually from Obi-Wan. Yeah, you've met him several times actually, Ahsoka took a deep breath as she braced herself to drop the thermal detonator. I'm Naruto Uzumaki's little sister. Ahsoka revealed as Anakin stared at her with his mouth slightly agape. His eyes wandered for a moment, his tongue rolling aimlessly in his mouth searching for the right words. Anakin's sharp side turned into a brief chuckle. Well, a lot of things make sense now. I was beginning to think you were just a weirdo. Anakin jested, slowly nodding his head in realization. He understood why she was acting so strangely. He and Naruto never truly saw eye to eye, and he probably told the Togruta plenty of unflattering stories. Anakin had always hated the constant comparisons to Naruto. Even Obi-Wan was guilty of it. In fact, Naruto was seen as some kind of superior standard that he was supposed to live up to as the chosen one. His military record and his skills as a GD were nothing to scoff at, that was true, but why did that mean that every GD general in the Republic had to be compared to him? I can safely say that I'm not Naruto. I'm Anakin Skywalker, and I like to do things my way. Anakin boasted as he lifted the metal box. However, in his haste he failed to notice a Droideka, which he then bumped into. Oh dear, Ahsoka briefly panicked as she looked at the Droideka turn around. She hadn't fought one before, but she had heard tales from Naruto and King about how dangerous these droids were, even to GD. She knew she didn't stand a chance once it turned on its shield, so she quickly turned and ran, with Anakin following right after her as an angry droid fired at them, quickly giving chase. Seeing that the blaster fire had stopped, the two looked back to see it rolling towards them. Thinking quickly, the two came to a full stop and lunged at the rolling droid, slicing it into 3 pieces. But thinking. Anakin complimented, to which she nodded. It seemed like he had the same plan as her. With the droid taken care of, they quickly started to make their way to the generator. I imagine that you don't have the best outlook of me, right? Anakin inquired as the two made their way along. Well, Naruto mentioned that your clone casualty rates were almost double his, and how you were always fruitlessly trying to outdo him. Ahsoka replied frankly. It was no secret that Anakin and Naruto were unofficially competing for the honor of superior leadership, nor was the fact that he was always in a sort of rivalry with Naruto. First of all, Naruto's casualty rates are abnormally low, and he gets himself injured way more than I do trying to protect his troops. I lead my men into some highly dangerous missions. Anakin defended himself fiercely, to which Ahsoka smirked. This was definitely something she could use anytime she wanted to get a cheap verbal jab in. Naruto leads dangerous missions, too. He was even caught in a major ambush, and still he managed to pull his men together to fight a battle that was never supposed to be winnable. I actually contributed to that one. Ahsoka countered. She recalled how she received that distress signal she received from King on Kamino. Yeah, well, not everyone is Naruto. I care about my soldiers just as much as him, and I don't take their deaths lightly. And like I said, I am not Naruto. Anakin wanted to be known as Anakin Skywalker, not as that GD who kept trying to surpass Uzumaki. Oh yeah, well. Ahsoka started but was pulled back by Anakin. She was about to turn to him to ask why, only for him to point at the ground as some sort of antennas were sticking out. They have this place trapped. Touch those antennae and droids will pop up everywhere. Anakin warned as the two started to worm their way towards the shield generator as fast as possible. Obi-Wan couldn't keep fighting forever. I think these should be enough to destroy it. Ahsoka questioned as Anakin nodded with a smirk. It'll be more than enough. Anakin was beginning to warm up to his new Padawan. Maybe he wouldn't immediately request for her to be transferred to some other master. Now come on, let's get out of here before these things blow. Anakin stated as they two quickly made some distance between them and the shield generator. Anakin looked at Ahsoka before throwing the detonator at her. Here, you do the honors. Anakin ordered with a smile. Ahsoka looked at him owlishly. Wait, really? She asked. She had never really gotten to blow up anything this large. Anakin nodded. Ahsoka grinned as she turned towards the shield generator and pressed the button with more force than necessary, causing the whole area to go up in a torrent of flames and scrap. Now that was awesome. Ahsoka shouted as Anakin chuckled as he turned to head back. It never gets old. Now come on, Snips. Obi-Wan will need our help. Anakin called out to her as he ran off towards the Republic base. Alright, hey. My name is not Snips. It's Ahsoka. She shouted as Anakin merely laughed playfully at her expense. Ahsoka puffed her cheeks before she smiled slightly as she ran after him. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad being apprenticed to this petty, but rather competent asshole. Adjun System, Northern Land of Fire. Naruto stared intensely as the Kazukage's wind jutsu buffeted his old prison fatigues, slicing through both the cloth and his skin beneath. Rather than stand like a nerf in headlights against the unrelenting tempest, the ex-GD leapt through the gusts to a nearby tree branch, pulling himself out of harm's way, or so he thought. The fireball from the silver-haired scarecrow was heading in his direction. Reaching out with the force, he pulled himself to a nearby tree, but curse when the branch buckled. The strength necessary to pull himself must have been too great for the tree to handle. Thankfully, there was no shortage of wooden protrusions to land on, but it did put Naruto in a disadvantageous position. The shinobi were able to maintain the high ground with ease, thanks to their seemingly magnetic feet. Naruto couldn't help but wonder at the potential usefulness of that skill. It seems that the Kazukage has gotten herself a bodyguard. Naruto said with a mocking smirk. Taunting the ninja might distract them from their advantage. Or two. Naruto heard from behind himself. Pivoting himself around, he managed to block the trench knife, trying to embed itself in his flesh, courtesy of the grizzled smoker. Naruto tried to press the advantage with his strength, but the middle-aged man proved physically dominant in the exchange. Naruto realized the ingenuity almost immediately. While he had faced opponents with 2 melee weapons before, but none so small. The lack of distance between the fulcrum and the load made the knives a very effective lever. This would make the old man a unique and interesting opponent. Naruto began losing ground as he felt the force of his opponent go from his arms, to his shoulders and chest, to his back, and finally his legs. Quite literally on his back foot, Naruto surprised his opponent by giving in. Unprepared for the change in momentum, Asuma tumbled forward, giving Naruto an opportunity to roll behind him, and move in for a strike on his back. That's when Naruto noticed the fireball and gust of wind heading his way, and that the air had empowered the fireball into a mighty blaze. So that's how this fight is going to play out, huh? Naruto grumbled as he leapt to the safety of a nearby tree branch. This Asuma was keeping him off the Kazukage by engaging in close combat, and even though Naruto was the better blade master, the Kazukage and her scarecrow would simply interject with a long-range attack the moment he gained an advantage. He would have to pick one of them off if he wanted to maintain the upper hand. It might take some effort, but he knew that he could eventually outwit the 2 bodyguards, and get his hands on the Kazukage. Asuma might be his equal strength-wise, but he wasn't on par with his speed. Deciding to ignore Asuma entirely, Naruto leapt up the tree branches towards the Kazukage. He smirked when he looked down to see Asuma's face drain of its color. Completely outpacing the smoking shinobi with his force-enhanced speed, Naruto preemptively struck out towards the white-haired ninja, suspecting that he was the most versatile fighter of the 3, and was ready to support either gruff grizzly bear or the dainty fan user. Kakashi was caught off guard by his barrage of weapons being cut down effortlessly. This boy had incredible speed. Naruto came close. So close. But his climb was just barely slow enough for Temari to reposition to a safer location. Knowing that the ninja couldn't keep this up forever, Naruto made another mad dash towards the Kazukage, using a tree branch to avoid a cloud of burning ash coming his way on behalf of the smoker. So he did have long-range attacks. In order to stop his advance, Kakashi moved directly in the way of Naruto, and tried to block his lightsaber with the Kuwani. Naruto swung and the small metal knife offered little resistance. With a sharp kick, Naruto knocked the silver-haired shinobi out of the way and continued his pursuit. Temari was simply too slow, and she turned to try and blow the blonde out of the way. Naruto persisted through the slicing winds at speeds Temari couldn't fathom. With the force on his side, Naruto overtook the Kazukage and struck with his lightsaber. She blocked with her fan, but it nearly met the same fate as Kakashi's kunai. A last-ditch effort was made to try another wind jutsu, but Naruto was sick of the situation and lashed out with the force. Temari didn't know what hit her. Was it wind? Air pressure? Some sort of gravity jutsu? She had no clue, but it all had the same effect. She was sent flying through the treetops, colliding with every branch and bush possible. Naruto's push even sent her through a small tree, and when her head collided with the trunk of a large oak, her consciousness ended. Naruto glanced at his hand. That was much more power than he had intended. He felt an even greater need to end this fight and speak with the Hokage. Glancing down at the unconscious Temari, he could faintly feel her life through the force. It was still difficult considering the sea of energy teeming around him, but he managed to pull off all the same. Turning towards Kakashi and Asuma, he stared down the leaf ninja before rushing in for an attack. Sasuke vs Kenichi. Sasuke snarled, reeling in pain slightly every time the intense heat of Kenichi's swords came near. He had had some success in holding back Kenichi's strikes, but each blow was becoming more and more powerful than the next. That was the greatest strength of Kenichi's blazing blade technique. He was able to channel more chakra into the blade than was expelled out as fire. I've become sloppy if I really let him accumulate this much power. Sasuke thought, grunting with each powerful blow from Kenichi. Leaning back to avoid Kenichi's next swing, Sasuke disengaged from the duel and ran through hand signs. Fire release. Phoenix Age Flower. Sasuke threw a volley of a dozen or so shuriken that were immediately engulfed in a flame from his mouth, giving them a deadly boost towards their target, Kenichi, who was already prepared with a jutsu of his own. Fire release. Blazing meteors. Kenichi let forth a cannonade of fireballs that dwarfed Sasuke's shuriken in comparison. The meteors nullified each of Sasuke's attacks, and there were still some left over to strike towards Sasuke. Slicing through them with his vibroblade, Sasuke swung in anticipation of Kenichi's attack, but found that the shinobi had come in lower than expected. His guard was broken through, but he had still managed to knock away Kenichi's swords. Sasuke tried desperately to recover, to block the inevitable counter-swing. He saw Kenichi had thrown one of his swords to the ground, and was advancing with an open palm at the ready. That mistake will cost you. Kenichi shouted out as he quickly disarmed Sasuke by sending a brutal palm strike, one that was still coursing with flame. The impact was too great, and Sasuke's vibroblade was parted from his hand. Kenichi's offensive didn't stop. The dark-haired leaf nin quickly crouched low to avoid Sasuke's desperation, delivered a brutal kick to Sasuke's chin, sending the bounty hunter high into the sky from the impact. Before he could recover, Kenichi was already floating underneath him. Oh shit. Sasuke had learned what was to come from this move all too well in the past, but this was different from Lee. Yes. Shit. Kenichi's deadpan words spelled doom for the Uchiha as Kenichi wrapped his still-burning arms around Sasuke's armored chest. The pain was negligible at first, but Kenichi turned up the heat to something Sasuke hadn't thought possible before. His armor began heating up. Unable to resist the increased temperature, Sasuke began writhing in pain, but couldn't break free of Kenichi's grasp responsible for the burn. As they reached the apex of their brief gravity-defying flight, Kenichi began to spin wildly on the vertical axis, disorienting Sasuke greatly. Fire release. Burning Lotus. Sensing his impending death, Sasuke began to panic. Crashing into the ground like a meteor burning up in the atmosphere was understandably a fate wasn't looking forward to. With his pain struggles failing and his time fading away, Sasuke reached for the controls to his jetpack and activated it in a last-ditch effort. Outfitted away by the burning fuel, Kenichi was forced to release Sasuke, who corrected his course and turned upright. He let out a sigh of relief, but felt a sudden sense of dread when he heard a distinct crackling in the distance, followed by a mighty bellow. Storm release. Laser circus. Glancing to his right, Sasuke's fears proved appropriate. He saw Dari, the Raikage's right hand, or more specifically, his signature jutsu, headed straight for his exposed flank. Sasuke thought quickly. Dodging this technique was practically impossible while midair in an exposed area like this. There were only a few beams of lightning, but it didn't matter. Without his sword there was no hope of deflecting all of the attacks. The second he blocked one, Dari would redirect the others and score a direct hit, were it not for the timely arrival of a metal-legged clone kicking a few of the lasers into the forest. Now there were only 2 beams, 2 was something Sasuke could handle. Sasuke positioned himself and flashed through hand signs as quick as possible, releasing a fireball large enough to overwhelm the leftover beams, and even counterattack Dari. Damn it. Dari yelled and was going to move to defend himself, but was saved when Kenichi arrived and sliced a fireball in 2 with his combusting sword. Out of the corner of his eye, Kenichi saw a glimmer of metal and raised his right-hand sword to block, but found that the weight behind the attack was much greater than a mere kunai or short sword, but was the full-sized body of an armored clone. Unable to compensate, Kenichi was overwhelmed and knocked to the ground, skidding a few meters before flipping himself onto his feet. Massaging his bloodied and likely fractured jaw with his still scorching hand, Kenichi cauterized the wound closed effortlessly, but he was still feeling the pain from that kick. An impressive strike, but all you've done is piss me off. Kenichi growled at his attacker, who still had his alloy leg raised. He was dangerously close to Derry, but the Cloud Ninja was too stunned to attack in time before Storm retreated to safety next to Sasuke. I guess I owe you one. Sasuke mumbled. What was that? Can't hear you. Storm raised his hands in faux defense when Sasuke groaned aggressively. Kidding, I'm only kidding. Now, how are we going to take these guys down? Storm asked with a smirk. That was one good hit, and you were lucky Kenichi wasn't prepared for it. He's going to be more aware of you now, so there's no way you're getting in a hit like that, unless you're prepared to lose your other leg. Sasuke tried to act unimpressed to keep his ego intact, but what he said was still true. Kenichi was far above Storm's level. That's no problem, I'll just take the other guy. You should be able to handle Kenichi if he's on his own, right? Storm briefly stumbled over the name that was foreign to him, but his grin never faltered. That may not be the best idea. You're a close combat specialist, right? Well, Derry's a long-range fighter with his Storm release. Might make it hard to close the gap. The bounty hunter warned. Storm release. Storm's eye twitched slightly. Yeah, Ranton, or Storm release. The combination of the lightning and water elements. It makes those flowing beams of electricity you just kicked away. Sasuke elaborated, but Storm hadn't heard anything after the words Storm release. The plucky 7th Company captain caught his own punch and looked even more determined. Oi, what the hell that all about? Guess I'll have to show him who the real Storm is around here. The offended clone stomped his cybernetic leg into the ground. You're lucky that leg of yours doesn't conduct electricity or you'd be toast. Sasuke had a brief epiphany as he stared at the boastful clone's prosthetic. Actually, now that I think about it, aside from me and Uzumaki, you're probably the only one here who stands a chance against Derry, thanks to that leg. He's going to try and keep his distance the whole fight, but that shouldn't matter as long as you meet every attack head-on with that leg. Go nuts, Storm. That's the only path for me, bounty hunter. Storm smirked as he took off running at full speed towards Derry. His baton roared to life as he brought it down towards the Cloud Ninja's head. Relieved that he was back to fighting only one opponent, Sasuke turned back to Kenichi, and the two resumed their duel. Their weapons flourished through the air as Kenichi's flame-coated sword danced in a fierce battle against Sasuke's speed-oriented style. It doesn't matter. I don't need Derry's help. You're still faltering, Uchiha. Kenichi goaded from behind his blade, but Sasuke only growled in response. I'll show what faltering really means. Sasuke shouted as he pushed Kenichi's strike back, slightly impressing the man. Breaking the bind, Sasuke quickly flashed through his seals, his hand being engulfed in lighting. Using the surprise to his advantage, Sasuke quickly grabbed Kenichi's twin swords with his lighting-covered hands before sending lighting through the man's swords and into him. Kenichi ground his teeth as he tried to overcome the pain. He quickly sent out a kick to disengage with Sasuke. The kick was more powerful than Sasuke anticipated, and he lost his balance, falling to the ground disgracefully. That was an impressive trick, but you didn't go for the kill while I was stunned. Kenichi stated as Sasuke glared at him intensely. Though you did show me what faltering really means, I'll give you that. It's embarrassing that you call yourself a shinobi. Kenichi added as Sasuke narrowed his eyes as he stood up, and so the struggle began anew. Sasuke didn't know what it was. Perhaps it was the gap in power, skill, or speed, but hope began to wane despite his pride telling him to fight on. He had faced gangsters, smugglers, bounty hunters, even Jedi, and some of the most dangerous creatures the galaxy had to offer. But Kenichi was just a different beast altogether. He was smart and his abilities were tempered with years of toil. He was gifted like Sasuke or Neji, but he didn't let his advantage over others get to his head, and he worked just as hard, if not harder, than shinobi that weren't as talented. He and Kenichi were relatively even before he left Konoha, but the gap between the two had still widened, despite Sasuke's tutelage under Django. It was almost as if the gods themselves were aiding him somehow. Perhaps it was some sort of divine prank, but all the same Sasuke began to feel himself slipping against the superior shinobi. I see that you're as stubborn as ever, Uchiha. You can barely keep your balance, but you keep trying to stand anyway. Kenichi piled on the taunts. He was rather good at making his opponents feel awful about themselves. The pride of Uchiha, right? Kenichi wasn't the least bit amused. Sasuke's blonde companion had injured the Kazukage and was now overpowering Asuma and Hatake. Kenichi briefly considered ordering Killer Bee to exchange opponents, but the Kumo ninja was seemingly having a hard time defeating the tactics of his four foes. They weren't a threat to the Jinchuriki, but they had proven to be very good at not dying. Bee's tremendous stamina would hopefully win him the day. I'm actually ashamed of myself that you've lasted this long. Kenichi began switching up his swordplay, using his two swords for simultaneous power strikes that shattered any defense Sasuke put up. The trails of flames echoed from every strike like the fangs of a wolf or tiger. Already feeling himself fading, Sasuke glanced around the battlefield. See many of the same things that Kenichi had seen just a few moments ago, but with the added clarity of the Sharingan. It was then that Sasuke formulated a plan. Knowing that losing his battle with Kenichi was an inevitability at this point, Sasuke took the only option remaining that could ensure their survival. He left himself wide open. Taking the opening, Kenichi's blades finally struck through and cut deep into Sasuke's armor, leaving 2 long gashes along the metal that went all the way through. Reeling in pain, Sasuke surrendered to the darkness that had been slowly consuming his vision. Despite collapsing to the ground in a heap, Sasuke fought hard to maintain consciousness, almost failing a couple times. Kenichi briefly inspected the seemingly unconscious Uchiha. He went down in an odd manner. Even if the traitor was barely clinging to life, his Sharingan should have kept him able to see his attack incoming. Perhaps the last Uchiha had given up. Unlikely. Regardless, Kenichi felt there were more pressing matters to attend to than the sleeping Uchiha. That blonde was a problem he would have to deal with personally. King vs Samui. King's Vibrochnives were caught in a fierce flurry against Samui's Tanto. Despite putting up a good fight, Samui could feel that she was slowly winning the advantage over King. He was slowing down and the power behind his swings was dropping by the minute. Samui saw an opening and she took it, her strike followed through, and one of King's Vibrochnives was wrenched from his hand. Samui managed to grab the unarmed hand and twisted King round on his elbow, forcing him to drop his other knife. He broke free with a punch to her chest, but that left him open to her final attack. With nowhere to run and nothing else to do, King raised his hand in a desperate defense. Samui felt the Tanto slice through King's hand, but something was wrong. Learned this from Uchiha, maybe. King chuckled slightly. He wasn't a shinobi, but the tactic was definitely one he learned from observing Sasuke's battle with Shakti. Samui's eyes widened slightly in a blend of surprise and confusion at his broken sentence. She had just slashed through his hand, he should at least be wincing in pain or shown in that he was affected at least in some way. She moved to strike again at the defenseless King, but found that her Tanto wouldn't budge. It was caught against something. The bones in his hand. No, there was something inside of his palm that he was gripping onto firmly. A small metallic canister that had stopped her Tanto about a third of the way through. She pulled her Tanto back and forth trying to wrest it from his grasp, but she'd already exhausted her energy trying to take him down. It hit her like a ton of bricks, when she realized that King had been lulling her into a false sense of security. He'd been planning this for the past few minutes. Game over, lady. King said with a smirk as he squeezed the trigger on the grenade, and braced himself for the incoming shock. Samui's eyes bulged fully as she saw the electric pulse travel down her Tanto, almost as if it were in slow motion. Amplified times by the metal in her weapon, the shock that hit her was significantly stronger than what King was feeling in his insulated bodysuit. It wasn't long before the pain overtook her and Samui faded into unconsciousness. King sighed a deep sigh as the pain of the shock left his body. Shock-resistant thermal sealed body glove or not, getting hit directly by one of those things still hurt quite a bit. He could only imagine what she had felt unprotected against the discharge. He briefly felt a slight bit of guilt for ever using them on separatist droids, but they couldn't feel pain like a human could. Remember that the others were still locked in a struggle. King turned his attention to his general, who was currently locked in a desperate struggle against 3 enemies that were each just as powerful as Samui had been, if not more. He did a quick check of himself as he retrieved his vibroblades. The ex-commando reloaded his pistols and took a quick breather, preparing himself for another difficult fight. He had seen Sasuke go down in the corner of his eye, and knew that the bounty hunter had let himself be struck down for a reason. Whatever reason that was didn't matter, and King put his trust in the Uchiha. For now, Naruto needed his help. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.